Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tuesday, November 22nd edition of the Basalt Town Council meeting. And I'll wait for our town clerk to call the roll.
He's racing around like a chicken. Did you start up? Thank you. We are at 6:04. All right, you ready for the roll, sir?
Yes, please, call the roll. We're good to go.
Thank you. Let's begin with Ryan Slack.
Here.
Bill Kane.
Here?
Dieter Schindler.
Present.
Angela Anderson. Here. Glenn Drummond.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't.
Yeah. Glenn, are you muted maybe, or?
I think your volume, Pam, if you see in the bottom, your speaker has an X next to it.
Yes. But if I do that, then it makes echo. See, it should come out here, not here.
Say something intelligent, Glenn.
No.
Do we have a
No, we're
volume
not-
on Glenn?
don't have
We
it yet.
see you're here, Glenn. We see you. We feel
Okay,
you.
we know you're here,
Yeah.
okay. And David Knight is absent.
We
and
can't hear you either,
Elise
but we
Huddle.
can see you.
Present.
Thank you. I don't know why we can't hear him. Can we hear Ryan Mahoney?
No. Nope. But can you guys hear us? Yes.
Yes, okay. We may be using a lot of.
Only hand signals.
Ryan and
signs
Glenn,
here tonight.
if we can please ask you to maybe try to call in by phone. I can give you the number.
Are they panelists?
They're panelists, so they'll still be able to see it, but then,
But can they both call in on this? Yeah.
so the phone number would be 719 359 4580. And webinar ID is going to be 818 5365 4900.
So we're gonna have other people calling in this evening too. I mean,
That's okay.
joining
It'll-
Zoom.
It'll still
so-
work if they're. One of you is on. Can you? And I'm asking you to unmute. The other is on as well, asking you to unmute. Can you guys talk, Ryan, Glenn?
Your computer's on mute.
Ryan, you're still muted. No, I'm not. Glenn, can you talk?
Oh, is it his computer?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, this computer.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Is that your speaker? There you go. No?
No, I'm not muted.
Oh, it's off. Yeah, turn
Yeah.
that on.
Turn,
Hit that
lock
X.
the X.
Hit the X.
There you
There you go.
Okay, now talk, guys.
How about now?
There we go.
There we go.
There we are. Okay.
Ryan,
Success, yay.
Technology.
Ryan, you're muted.
Okay, so we are at, we're off to a roaring start. We've done the roll call, haven't we? So the first order of business is to review and approve the consent agenda, which consists of 3 items. We have minutes from November 8, and then we're going to continue the public hearing for, or transfer of ownership for medical marijuana license for 2 of those. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I move the town council approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, good for that one. So at this point, we will accept comment from the public for items that are not actually on the agenda for later. So we will hear from folks either physically present in the audience or virtually calling in. So I don't recognize those numbers. Do we? That's probably
That's Glenn.
Ryan and Glenn. So
Glenn is 6120.
Ryan still, they're both muted. We'll keep moving. So hearing none, then we will go to mayor and council comments. Do we have any reports tonight or comments?
I just got, just a follow-up of the Rudai Water and Power Authority, the inspections and decons. This year they did 6,330 boat inspections. 198 decons and 13 boats were found with mussels. They have found mussels now at Highline Reservoir, which is outside Fruita. So that's the first location in Colorado.
Great.
So they are coming, and we continue to support this program and prevent them from clogging up Fruita.
Excellent. Good news. So no mussels up there?
No mussels up
bad
there yet.
critters? That's good, yeah. Jackie's using hand signs out here, I don't know. So I would sort of reiterate our congratulations to our Basalt High School football team, who came ever so close and got pretty far into state championships, and hats off to those guys. They did a great job and made the community proud. So thanks to the coach and Basalt Longhorns. So that was a big deal. Anyone else? I think Ryan was going to provide do you want to do an update, or are you good?
Ryan, just unmute your computer if you can hear me.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're good.
Oh, okay. That's great. I just had one quick update for you, which was the last time we met. I had just mentioned about the kickoff for the new town logo, and that is now underway. I'm going to be reaching out to all the council members. The team wants to do sort of individual interviews with council members, but they did do a presentation to BPAC last week, and then they'll start getting to each of our other committees so that we can get the sort of ad hoc logo committee put together. So more to come on that, but it's underway, and more communication to council individually coming your way as well. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Okay. With that, I think we can turn to council actions. And first item 6B, public hearing, second reading, ordinance number 21, series of 22, an ordinance of the town of Basalt, Colorado, approving amendments in municipal code section 8-4, schedule 2, vehicles and traffic special hazards. James.
Yeah, thank you. This is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would approve of updates to the chart known as Schedule 2 of the Town Code Section 8-4. The chart includes all the public streets in town, as well as the speed limits and on-street parking requirements for those streets. The proposed amendments that you have in your packet would add all of the streets in Cypress Meadows, as well as Southside, Stotts Mill, and Basalt Vista, as the last time the chart was updated was before those developments existed. There are also a couple of road-specific adjustments to the chart, including allowing parking on the outside of the loop on Roaring Fork Court. There is one change to the ordinance since the first reading. Staff noticed that the existing chart includes 2 areas of Midland Avenue in the chart, and they've got the speed limits backwards from the posted speed limits. So staff has adjusted those in the chart to match the existing posted speed limits. That being the case, staff would recommend taking any public comments because it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion. If you're comfortable, you could approve of the amendments on second reading.
Great. Thanks. So, as you can see, this is mainly updating our ordinance to embrace a lot of areas that actually weren't developed at the, when the old ordinance was around in 18. So, any public comment? Anyone here in the audience? Anybody calling in? Any questions, comments from council? Entertain a motion. Stefan?
I couldn't read it, but it said something about East Cody Lane.
Sure. Let me bring it back up.
James?
No parking on north side of street.
And no carpet sales on that street are permitted. No rug sales.
Oh, really?
No, take it easy.
East Cody Lane includes no parking on the north side of the street. This was a request from the fire district. They've had issues with being able to get through when there's parking on both sides of the street.
Good.
Okay,
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 21, series of 2022 on second reading.
Second.
okay, moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let me catch up to this speedy little group here tonight. Every night. Okay, let us begin with Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Angela Anderson? Yes. Glenn Drummond?
Yes.
Elise Hoddle?
Yes.
Ryan Slack?
Yes.
And Bill Kane?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion
Okay,
carries.
next order of business, item 6C, this is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance number 22, a series of 2022, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving a PUD amendment to add a domestic abuse shelter as a special review use at 325 East Cody Lane, Lot H of the Basalt Business Center, East PUD. James, good evening, guys.
Thank you.
James?
Yeah, we have applicants here this evening. We've got Shannon Meyer, who's the Director of Response. We've got Chris Benden and Aaron Wackerly from Benden and Adams. This is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance that would approve of an application submitted by Response on behalf of Catchcar LLC, who are the owners of the property at Lot H, Basalt Business Center East PUD. It's a PUD amendment request to add domestic abuse shelter as a special review use on Lot H of Basalt Business Center East, which is also known as 325 East Cody Lane. And you can see the property here on the map that we have up here. It's located at the end of East Cody Lane. As background, Lot H is a vacant lot at the end of Cody Lane. Response to the organization has it under contract to purchase, and they would like to construct a domestic abuse shelter on the property. They have proposed a PUD amendment that would add domestic abuse shelter as a special review use on the lot. The domestic abuse shelter is defined in the application materials that you have in your packet, and you can see them right here. This is the proposed definition. It includes a combination of office facilities as well as client rooms to temporarily house victims of domestic abuse when needed. The applicants have only requested a PUD amendment to add the use at this point, as they haven't fully designed the building, but I believe that they have some sketches to show you as a concept. The applicants wanted to have the use reviewed before fully designing the building and taking that effort because they wanted to determine if the use was acceptable first. The applicants have provided a draft program that's in the application materials that's in your packet. As I noted, it includes office space as well as client rooms. The review process is a PUD amendment to add as a special review use domestic abuse shelter. It requires the Planning and Zoning Commission to make a recommendation to the Town Council with public hearings at both P&Z and council levels. In reviewing the application, staff has provided some discussion items that are in the Planning and Zoning Commission memo that's attached in your packet. The most significant discussion item that was taken up by the Planning and Zoning Commission was consistency with the Basalt Business Center East uses. And the uses in the Basalt Business Center East are based on the industrial zone district, which is the underlying zoning. And they're established on an individual lot basis in that PUD. As noted in the packet materials, the use would primarily consist of office space as well as client rooms. In breaking the use into components, the office portion of the use is consistent with the other uses in the PUD, as the office uses are prevalent on the north side of Cody Lane. The shelter component is less solidified in the PUD, except that the PUD allows for accessory units. In other projects in the industrial zone district, it has been interpreted that residential uses to be accessory would be less than half the square footage of the total project. So staff has provided some optional language in the draft ordinance that's highlighted in yellow, which would limit the client shelter rooms to less than half of the facility's square footage. The Planning and Zoning Commission decided not to include this language in their recommendation because they felt that the use was really unique and was different than a residential use in general. There are other draft conditions that have been included in the ordinance. One draft condition requires that the applicant come back through a special review when the building design has been completed. A special review would require review by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council, and it would have aspects like traffic, parking, housing mitigation, and security reviewed at that time when there's a full building design. There's also conditions in the draft ordinance that require acknowledgement of the existing industrial uses adjacent to the property. This is a condition that we've placed in other industrial zone district developments to acknowledge that there are existing uses around that have industrial impacts like noise and sometimes odors. And finally, there's a condition in there about vested rights, that vested rights wouldn't be granted with this PUD amendment, that they would have to come back with a special review application, and at that time, if that were approved, that's when they would gain vested rights. With regards to referral comments, the police department indicated that they didn't have any comments on the use amendments, but would have comments on a specific building proposal in the future. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed the application and recommended approval with the conditions that you have in your packet. However, as I noted, they did not include the optional condition in their recommendation. This evening, staff would suggest taking applicant comments and discussion, and then taking public comments as it is a public hearing. And then if you are comfortable with the conditions, the council could ultimately approve the ordinance on first reading. With that, I will stop sharing my screen and bring up the applicant's presentation here. Quick second. Okay. Let me adjust this. Once again, we have Shannon Meyer from Response. We've got Chris Benden and Aaron Wackerly.
Okay, Chris,
Okay,
you guys got the floor.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of Town Council. excited to be here. We have what we think is a really good community serving project that is evidence of community service above self within our community. My name is Chris Benden, and this is Erin Wackerly. We're with Benden Adams. This is Shannon Meyer, Executive Director of Response. You'll hear from her in just a minute. I think James did a good summary of what it is we're doing here, what we're asking to add this use to the PUD. We'll come back with full designs, although we do have some images to show you. I did want to start off with having Shannon provide you with a little insight onto herself and what Response is and what they do.
Sure. Thanks for having us here tonight. As Chris said, I'm Shannon Meyer. I'm Director of Response, and I've been with Response for 5 years and lived in the Valley for 25 years. Response has actually been around for 40 years this winter, so been here for a long time. Founded by a group of volunteer women in Aspen when they realized there were no services for people experiencing domestic abuse. Yeah, no problem. Just want to be heard. We serve survivors of domestic and sexual abuse throughout the Upper Valley, so people that live in, work in, or visit Western Eagle and Pickens County. There's a misconception that domestic abuse is something that doesn't happen in our beautiful valley. I hear that too many times to count, but statistically 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men will experience some form of physical violence from a partner in their lifetime, and our numbers are no different here. Last year, for instance, we served 175 survivors and answered over 300 calls to our crisis helpline. And those numbers have been increasing 20% each year since the start of the pandemic. We provide individual advocacy, we provide crisis intervention, we provide support groups, therapy, legal assistance, emergency financial help, and housing assistance. We provide 3 different types of housing assistance to survivors. The first is emergency shelter that we're able to provide in local hotels. The second is this transitional housing piece, which is for people to move into for up to 3 months when they're trying to find a place to land on their feet after leaving an abusive relationship. And finally, after that, when people are transitioning to independent living in the community, we have long-term rental assistance that we provide. We have been providing that middle piece, the transitional housing, in apartments that Response has rented. We started this program in 2019. We had 1 unit. We quickly needed a second. We very quickly needed to add a third. And then soon we needed to add a 4th, and we couldn't find one to rent. As we all know, finding housing for anyone in this valley is so challenging, and you imagine if you're fleeing an abusive relationship, that can seem impossible. So we have had a waiting list for our transitional housing units for the last 2 years, even as we add new units. This year alone, as of this month, we've served 17 survivors and 17 of their children in our 3 to 4 transitional housing units. And when someone is on a waiting list for our housing, it's not that they're just hanging out waiting for something better to come along. They're staying in an abusive relationship until they have a safe place to go. So that is really the impetus for us looking into finally building a permanent shelter and home for Response in the valley moving forward. And that's the project we're here to talk to you about tonight.
Okay, thanks, Shannon. James, you can flip to the next slide. I'll tell you a little bit about the property that we're looking at. It's undeveloped at the end of East Cody Lane. It is a property in the industrial zone district. It allows for a 2-to-1 floor area ratio. The property is about 31,000 square feet, so it technically could support a building 62,000 square feet. I think you'd be hard pressed to figure out how to get all that to fit, but technically that's what the zoning allows for. Range of commercial uses like you might expect: professional offices, paint store, auto uses, contractor, supply, vet clinic, etc. Does allow for residential as an accessory use, as James mentioned, for up to 49% or less than 50%. It will be developed for something at some point, and it'll have a range of impacts and traffic and whatnot that comes along with development. Some of those developments could have significant traffic, right? Like a vet clinic has quite a bit of traffic. A paint store, as people are getting all their supplies in the morning and so on, can have a pretty heavy duty traffic going through there. It's a tight-knit neighborhood. If you could flip, thanks. Maybe a couple more. Yeah, it's the tight-knit neighborhood. There's an HOA that's very involved there that I'll talk about in a second. Which is good, because there's people that actually care about what's happening in their neighborhood. We are still going through and gaining better understanding of the floodplain implications. The site during a 100-year flood event is 18 inches deep of water, so we have to figure out what to do with that. We're in the floodplain, not the floodway, so we get wet. We don't get like swept away. We get wet. What that means to the building, as we know so far, is that a portion of the building is going to have to be elevated up on piers so that we can be above that floodplain. The water can go underneath the building. That has implications on our height, and if we kind of peer down the roadway, we may be back here requesting an adjustment to the height for this property in consideration of the floodplain. There's some various easements. There's a ditch on the east side that's a run out from the Cerise property. Next slide, please. There was a quiet title action on the southern portion of the property, so its square footage is less than was originally platted. We're asking for the town to add this use, a domestic abuse shelter. We've provided a definition to town staff. I won't bother going through all of that because it's a lengthy definition, but happy to circle back on that if you'd like. I think maybe next slide, James. Yeah, here's the lengthy definition. I won't bore you with all of this. It's in your application. I think maybe the next. All right. So in terms of how the site lays out, this isn't necessarily in front of you right now, but we've had some thought about how we organize the site. And I'd like actually Shannon to talk a little bit about the program that she's looking to develop on the property in terms of number of rooms and types of uses.
Sure. And as you saw in the application, this is a public-facing shelter, and that is the new model that organizations like ours across the country are going to. So it's no longer a safe house that's hidden away and confidential. This will have our office and the shelter incorporated. And some reasons for that is that it's just a lot safer when people know where the shelter is. Law enforcement is aware of it, fire is aware of it, the community is aware of it on one side. And the other, when I said at the beginning, there's this misconception that domestic violence doesn't happen here. That is because of that hiding it away. And for people to know and reach out and get help, they have to know that we exist. So having our office in a public place, in a visible place, and incorporated with our shelter allows us to have more community awareness, allows us to have better ability to give services to our clients, and oversight and safety for the clients staying in that shelter. So what we're looking at is on the first floor is primarily the office use. We have a staff of 5, so we'll have staff space. We'll have client meetings rooms, a conference room. We'll have a food and clothing pantry for survivors. And then the entrance to the shelter will be also there on the first floor, just 2 entrances to keep it really safe, control access that way. On the first floor, we'll have a handicap accessible efficiency room. And in total, we're looking at 7 rooms for survivors. 5 of those will be efficiency units. So self-contained as far as kind of like a long-term stay hotel, like a bathroom, very small kitchenette, can serve a survivor and 3 children. And then 2 rooms for single survivors that can have 2 single survivors in each, or can be added onto one of the family rooms for a larger family. Most of the time, I would say 70% of the time, people in shelter come into shelter with children. So we're really modeling it after, best service for children. But also, we'll have a communal kitchen on the 2nd floor with most of the shelter rooms up there, and communal living space. And so that way, people in shelter have the option of really having their own space and privacy if they need it, but also a place, an ability to heal in community, which is very important. We'll have on the first floor a fenced play yard outside for kids to keep them contained and safe. And then we're hoping for kind of a peace garden area in the back that can be accessed for clients that are both in the shelter and those that come get services during the day but are not living in the shelter.
Okay. I think next slide, please. So, we want to focus on the criteria that are in front of you, and there's really two main ones, which is compatibility with the BBC East zoning and neighborhood. There's a wide range of uses there already, certainly compatible with office and light medical counseling uses that are there and that are allowed. There was a discussion in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission and repeated in the staff memo for tonight that we acknowledge, have our clients acknowledge what kind of neighborhood characteristics are there upon their arrival. I'll circle back to Shannon in a minute on that point. And then the second is compatibility with your master plan, which most of master plans kind of focus on the physical aspects of the community, where you want to grow, where you want to have open space, trails, etc. But there's also a social infrastructure component of master plans, and included in the Basalt master plan. And this is one of those uses that is maybe something that we need, although we don't necessarily want to acknowledge when we truly need it. In an ideal world, response wouldn't exist. Shannon would be working somewhere else because it wouldn't be an issue, and this is, wouldn't be something that we need. That's not the world we live in, unfortunately, and so response exists because it is needed. We feel that this use is acceptable when you look at these two criteria, and appropriate to have in Basalt in this location. We feel it's very workable. Next slide, please, James. So we have done some listening. It's important for us to make sure that we land in a neighborhood where we are welcomed, where the use is supported, and we create a good fit and a good dialogue, and especially with an existing neighborhood like this. We have very active HOA, as I mentioned. They care about their neighborhood, and they care about what happens on this property. Their major concern is threats to ongoing industrial uses, right, that are not always so pretty and elegant. I mean, they make noise, they're making smells, they have deliveries, and their concern is a use coming in, and then contacting the town and saying, hey, those guys over there are making noises and smells, and can you make them stop, because we just moved in, but we want you to make them stop. And so that is a concern for them. It was repeated again at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we're certainly willing and able to have our clients acknowledge what kind of neighborhood they're coming into when they arrive. And I want to have Shannon speak to her answer to that she provided the Planning and Zoning Commission, because I think it was impactful.
Yeah, we're just not worried about that being an issue for our clients. If you put it in the context of what's going on in these folks' lives, they're leaving a situation that's probably worse than anything any of us can imagine, and landing in this safe, beautifully designed space where they can regroup and get services and stay for free with their kids and for up to 3 months. The last thing they're going to worry about is if there's extra noise coming from next door. So it's just not something that we worry about at all.
Staff has provided a set of conditions which we are comfortable with. We do have a little pushback on the 49% condition. We talked about that with P&Z. This use is a little bit different, quite a bit different than maybe what you normally see in this neighborhood. Because we're not fully designed yet as a project, we're a little cautious about the 49% and whether or not it represents an impediment to fully realizing our mission. Ultimately, the facility serves a really important mission, and we want to provide it with the most flexibility to do that. The project will go through a special review with the Planning and Zoning Commission, so the operations and the design, the layout, and everything is going to be dialed in pretty tightly. I'll finish with this, and I think maybe the next slide, please, James. Yeah, thanks. That Response is an organization whose mission is to provide refuge and safe harbor to people experiencing domestic violence We believe our proposal is compatible with the BBC East, and it's compatible with your master plan. It's gonna take a lot of resource to meet the need that needs to for this project to come to fruition. We believe we can do it. We like the site. The site is workable for us. A lot of technical stuff to get through, as I mentioned, the floodplain and other parameters that we need to design around. We have a good team around this. The design that you see in front of you is from 2757 Architecture, local architecture firm. We feel it's a very workable site. We are happy with the initial designs. We do want to, as we're talking about adding this use to this zone district, encourage you, because we are in a position where we are still in due diligence. And if you have ever bought a property and you're in a period of due diligence, you're looking for all the reasons that you shouldn't go forward. It's sort of a reverse of what maybe the way you should think about it, but we're looking for all the things that could be an impediment to actually fulfilling this vision. And we've gone through a bunch. We feel good about where we are. But if you have seen anything tonight or heard anything tonight that represents in your mind an impediment for us going forward successfully, we'd love to hear if that's from you, if that's an actual impediment. Or on the other side, if there are concepts, ideas, maybe you've seen a facility in another community that has something you might be able to suggest to us to make sure that this facility is as successful as it can be. We'd love to hear that as well. With that, I think the final slide. I want to thank you for your time and listening to us. We'd be happy to answer questions.
Great. So this is a public hearing, and so I would just invite anyone from the public that would like to speak, and then we'll have questions from council to applicant and Chris. So anyone in the public like to speak on behalf of Stefan? Come on up.
I'm the vice president of the Homeowners Association.
Come on up here and please tell us your name, address, height, weight.
I don't know about that. Let's see. Is this working?
Yeah, it's working fine.
Stefan Isbarian, owner, along with my wife, of Isbarian Rug Company. We've 22 years on Cody Lane. And I'm vice president of the Homeowners Association, have been for a long time. This project was brought before us. We had an extended meeting with the entire association, and it went back and forth and ended up quite positive, I can say that. The initial vote was 8-3 in favor. Couple of weeks later, it became 10-3. So I just want you to know that the Homeowners Association is in favor of this project on Lot H.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Betsy Crum. I live at 565 Hillcrest Drive. And I am also the chair of the Board of Response, and I'm talking to you kind of with both hats, both as a resident and somebody who is very proud and excited to be part of this proposal and what's going on with Response. I just want to sort of underscore, I think speaking more from the heart as the board chair and somebody who really believes in this mission. They're an excellent organization, one of the best nonprofits that I've seen in my many years of working in this field. And I think we all need and deserve a safe place to call home, a safe harbor to come to at the end of the day. And I think that most women, Shannon says 1 in 3. I feel that most women I know have experienced some form of domestic or sexual violence in their life. Most of them have resources and support, but for those who don't, Response is really there. And they're there not just for the people who experience it directly, but for their children. And I think more than anything, I want to see the children have a safe place and be able to start to go through the recovery. I experienced some of that myself as a child, and I know what it would have meant to me and my family to have had a place to call safe at that point in my life. As I love being a Basalt resident, I think we're a great, responsible community. It's awesome here. I love it. I love how you all think about both the physical and the social needs of our community. And so I hope you'll support this. I think its response is working all throughout the valley. But, you know, this is a great location. It's great visibility. It's a beautiful design. And I'm happy to be part of it and to support it as a Basalt resident. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Jackie?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jackie Whitsitt. I live in Basalt. And 34 years ago, when we moved to this valley, we were in Glenwood Springs, and the first thing I did was look for something to do. So I signed up with the Advocate Safe House Project, and I was a volunteer with them. Back in those days, when people were in danger from domestic violence, we would place them in a volunteer's house. And so that's what I did, was meet people at the hospital, take them home. And it's not that great of an idea. So when this came forward and it was going to be in Basalt, I was very, very happy. I'm thrilled that this application is in front of you. It looks like staff is pretty okay with it, Planning Commission okay with it. It jumps through the hoops that it needs to jump through, and I also hope that you will give a nod on this, and hopefully the next round as well. So.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. Anyone else in the audience? Anybody calling in? Pam, can you tell? No?
It looks like we have John Fitzpatrick on.
Okay.
Let me ask him to unmute here.
All right. John, welcome. You are muted, so just be aware of that when you get on here.
John, can you hear us? Can you please unmute? If
I'm hearing you. I'm wondering
There we
if
go.
you hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I'm John Fitzpatrick. I'm owner of the building with High Tone Automotive, and my brother owns the collision shop building next door. I'm glad they've recognized that is a concern, that we do run a business, because this is an industrial zone neighborhood, and this is a big change from that, adding residencies. So I really wanted to make sure, somehow that this is acknowledged through the town. I get my 2 cents in, I guess, about that. That's my concern about it. I do have concern for safety of the children that possibly would be there, because we have semi-trucks that come and turn around in that cul-de-sac. It's constantly busy with tow trucks, delivery trucks, things you would find in an industrial zone. The other, this is such a big change too, that is industrial, and adding housing. What I worry about also is, what would happen 10 years down the road? They need a bigger building. They decide to move someplace else. What happens to this? I would hate to have opening a door, bringing in something that could end up being, a short-term rental, an Airbnb with all these little apartments. I would like to have that building would have to be, I don't know how you would put it, not rezoned, but would have a restriction if the change is not the domestic violence people, that it won't become a short-term rental place if the building changes hands for whatever reason, And that's just pretty much what I wanted to say, that there is concerns that we change this, and then there's still 2 empty lots in this neighborhood, and I don't want to start a precedent that all of a sudden we're going to build more housing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John. Anyone else? I think that's probably it. So with that, I will conclude the public hearing and ask if there are questions from council for the applicant or representatives.
I just have one kind of statement towards the, excuse me, concern of the industrial park. I believe that on the other project we approved over there, they had some of the same concerns, and I was gonna ask staff if we've heard any complaints from the people in those apartments behind the steel building.
You're talking about 525 Basalt Avenue, I believe. We really haven't had any complaints that we've heard from staff, at a staff level.
Okay.
Just for clarification, so in our motion, do we have to be specific to exclude the 49% limitation on residential floor area?
No, it's not part of the ordinance now, so you'd have to add it if you would like it to be in place.
All right. Questions, council? You got?
I agree with Chris. I don't see the point in having the 49% at this point in time. I think with the restriction of the floodplain, you're already gonna be struggling to make it work, so I am in favor of leaving that out for now and looking at it when it comes back for review.
And I guess my other statement would be with the concern of, you know, if they did try to move to a bigger facility, I think that would be handled in the second review, I'm guessing, when we do approve it. So,
And I had just a question about number of rooms and what the scope of that is, and you may want to defer that till you actually come through with your actual special review application, but if you know now, it might be nice to know that. Do you know?
Yeah, we have 7 client rooms, that's what we're looking at. We have a separate caretaker unit that, if the budget allows, we'd love to have an on-site kind of permanent person there. That helps with staffing, but also helps with security issues. The client rooms are sort of synonymous with a lodge room, right? You sort of have a semblance of a kitchen without having a real kitchen, right? You might have a microwave or a sink, but there's a communal kitchen, so they're not really set up to be independent apartment buildings. So the unwind, if the unwind needs to happen, is something that someone would have to come back and figure out what to do with the building and figure out that with the town and if it complies with the zoning and et cetera. So this is not really set up for some sort of parlay into something else.
Okay.
I also, sorry. I was gonna say, I appreciate the, how close it is to the Rafta bus stop, and that it would be accessible by the Basalt Connect shuttle as well. I know folks leaving an uncomfortable situation may not have a vehicle, so appreciate that.
What kind of security is your idea of the building looking for?
Yeah, so we're modeling this after a shelter that was built in 2020 over in Gypsum by the Bright Future Foundation, so we've learned a lot from their process. It's also a public-facing shelter. They don't have 24-hour on-site security. They have, like us, a caretaker, a staff person that lives adjacent to, but the security is really in the facility itself. So all the office spaces and the shelter will have panic buttons that can directly get us to security. We'll have only 2 entrances so that we can really control access. We'll have cameras on the doors and individual keypads for those doors. So if someone gets put in shelter, they have their own access code. If someone tries to enter a code that doesn't work, we have that on all of our phones. They do in Gypsum, it works well. So you can see if it's actually someone you know and they forgot their code, or if it's someone who shouldn't be there. And then you can alert security, and impact-proof glass on the first floor as well, in case someone tries to get in.
And then I guess the other question I have for James is, he referred to 2 other lots over there. I see maybe room for one next door possibly, but where are those?
Well, there is one vacant lot that I'm aware of next door, which is currently used for automobile storage for the uses over there. That's the one I'm aware of. I'm not aware of another one.
And then just to kind of dogpile, you know, I don't think there's a reason to go 49% at this point in time. It doesn't, there's a lot of work to do before we even think about that.
Further questions, comments?
I'll make an unrelated comment. As somebody that lives in Roaring Fork Apartments across the highway, it's really, really noisy. So please make sure that you build extra sound protection into that side of the building, especially for folks that are recovering from trauma. They don't need to hear brakes slamming and things like that. It would be very distressful.
Dieter, I think John can answer your question. He's got his hand up. Do you want?
Great.
Let me ask him to unmute.
John, you still with us?
Yes, I am. Could we repeat that question?
Yeah, how many, it indicated that there are 2 vacant lots on East Cody Lane and,
No, they're two separate lots.
okay. So is, I
Yeah.
presume one of
They're-
them
they're
is
both
this lot,
used for the
325.
automotive,
This lot, plus another, okay.
Parking.
All right, I think we got it, thank you.
Thanks, John.
I'm happy to make a motion.
You have a question?
No, make a motion.
Oh, you're ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Does Glenn have
Okay,
anything?
are there fresh?
No, I was gonna make the motion. Let's move along.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 22, series of 2022 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for December 13th, 2022.
Second.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Angela seconded it. Okay, just one comment before we vote. One, I want to acknowledge response and acknowledge what an important service you guys provide. Shannon's done a whale of a job with this organization, and I, for one, am very pleased, proud to have you guys in our town, so good work. Okay, so call the roll, Pam, please.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
and Angela Anderson.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you
Thank you very much.
soon with the, you're not going to be like back next Monday, are you? with the
No, we're on the 13th? 13th. It'll be soon enough.
That'd be okay, but.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll see you guys. So next item is, we are up to first reading ordinance number 23, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending section 16-203 of the Basalt Municipal Code related to licenses for short-term rental of dwelling units. Our town manager is very knowledgeable about this proposal, so why don't you fill us in, Ryan?
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, just fine.
Okay, great. And I can have Jeff fill in any blanks that I might miss that are, kind of details to the ordinances. But I'll start off by saying this ordinance number 23 will be related to ordinance number 25 as well. So I'm gonna cover a little bit of background that'll relate to both. This ordinance, as well as the other, is in part like a reflection of direction that we received from council, and just following up on that with regard to the management of our short-term rentals in town. So by way of background, we believe as staff we have somewhere between 40 and 80 short-term rentals, and currently have 7 to 10 licensed in town. And so we have been looking at ways that we can improve on that compliance with the licensing of them and creating a level playing field. We do have those licensees that are paying the lodging tax and sales tax for their short-term rentals, but then also for our lodges that not only pay the lodging tax, but also pay commercial property tax. So, just following through on this, we feel is prudent at this time. It also, in the future, will allow us to have, just a better handle on the number, and then being able to recommend policy to council, being more informed as we understand, what kind of impact they might be making, positive or negative. And so the first step here that we're going to be asking tonight is really about the licensing side of things and what we charge for that license. So the reason we're having this first reading tonight and then the second reading on December 13th is renewals will be coming up Jan 1. So we want to make sure that, we're not kind of getting a flood of these, at the beginning and not being ready for the fees. So this will allow us to be ready to charge the full fee for them. And what Ordinance 23 really does is amend our current short-term rental code section. And if you went through and reviewed that code section, it really just clarifies that we're creating a new class of license, and it's a short-term rental business license. And so that will come with a cost of $300 per year. And how did we arrive at that cost? So, we're looking at purchasing and getting going at the beginning of the year a software that will help us identify and manage the short-term rentals. So those that choose to have short-term rentals will help to subsidize the cost of that software. And then also we went through an exercise to understand, what kind of staff time goes into these short-term rentals each year as we review, collect, lodging tax, sales tax, do the licensing, etc. And, at $300, we're at about half the cost of what we're expecting. But, if there's more STRs than 40, then, that starts to cover our costs more. So we feel that this approach is a conservative one. We think it's fair. In addition to the $300 cost, we already have a $10 sales tax license fee that they would need to pay as well. And then finally, each year we do an inspection of the units, which has proven to be very important just to make sure that they're safe for people coming into our town, that there are fire alarms, that there are carbon monoxide alarms and fire extinguishers, and those kind of things that are just basic life safety things, and we do go out and inspect those. So with this first ordinance, again, it's really looking at those amendments on clarifying a new class of license, which is a short-term rental license, and then we'll get to the fees, because there are a few others in Ordinance 25. With that, that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. So this also is a public hearing. Any comments from any member of the public, either physically here or calling in? It appears not. Questions of council to?
Yeah, I had a real quick question. The Gov OS software, do we have to sign a contract, a multi-year contract for that, or is it year to year?
It's subject to annual appropriation, but I think it was the contract that we would sign was well, maybe it was just annual. Jeff, can you answer that? Sorry, I know that just came through.
It is a year-long contract that will automatically renew unless we terminate. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
And it's of an amount that, with our procurement code, doesn't need to come to council on, just on the dollar amount.
Okay, other questions? Motion?
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 23, series of 2022 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for December 13th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pam?
Absolutely. Let us start with Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
and Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we have a couple items coming up to discuss relative to our cemetery. So the next order of business is first reading for ordinance number 24, series of 2022, ordinance of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, adopting rules and regulations for the Basalt Fairview Cemetery pursuant to section 11-154 of the Basalt Municipal Code. Pam and Jeff.
Take it, you want me to start
Sure,
out?
I'll do it. So the town owns the Basalt Fairview Cemetery up Cemetery Lane, adjacent to the Meyer Ranch. It has rules and regulations related to how the cemetery operates, and it's been a while since those regulations have been updated. And so Pam worked on updating those rules and regs based on kind of practices might have evolved over time, and so there were a few tweaks to those rules. This is an ordinance that would just kind of repeal and replace in their entirety those rules. Pam, did you want to comment on any of the specific changes that were made? I don't believe any of them were overly or too controversial, but just kind of a good freshening of the rules.
Yeah, we had come upon disinterment question in the last couple of years, and so we wanted to address that and who's going to be responsible for any kind of disinterment. That was something that was new to our rules and regulations. Let's see, what else was there that was kind of new? Burial of pets up there at the cemetery was a question. The return of plots, if people choose not to use them or the family doesn't want them any longer, how they return those to the town was another issue. Animals up there have been kind of an issue in the past, dogs kind of using it as a dog park, and so we wanted to address some of that as well. So we just wanted to kind of codify and make these policies that we had in place more ironclad rules, I guess.
So we're not changing pricing for the plots or
So then the second part of this is there's an update to the fees.
Okay,
And
yeah, there
the fees were historically within the rules. And as you'll hear me say in more detail in the next ordinance, there's been an effort to move all the fees that were in the code or in the rules or wherever into a fee schedule. So everything's in one spot, more or less. And that's what's happening here. There's an update to the fees, but you'll adopt that fee update as part of the next ordinance, just like with the short-term rental fees, those will be approved as part of the next ordinance. So it's just the prior short-term rental ordinance kind of laid the groundwork for those to be implemented. And so Pam, did you want to address what the fee increases were? There were some changes based on whether you're a resident of the town and whether you're not.
Yes, we had quite a few people buying up plots that are within a certain zip code, but not within the town limits of Basalt. And we kind of checked with some of the other cemeteries in the area, some of the other communities, and they had a pricing structure for in-town specific, in-town limits, outside of town limits, but within that zip code, and then all other parts of the universe beyond those zip codes.
Gotcha.
For pricing. It seemed fair to give our residents of the community a different price than people who live, in Ohio or something, so out of state.
Right, okay. So, any comments, questions? Doesn't look like we have any public comment, so I'd entertain a motion to approve ordinance 24 on first reading.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 25, series of 2022 on first reading, set the public hearing and second reading. for December 13th,
It's 24.
2022.
Glenn, it's 24. We've got to.
Sorry.
We have
24.
I'll second 24.
Okay, all been moved and seconded. Please call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Let's begin with Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
and Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you, motion carries.
Okay. Now, the next piece, the other shoe, is first reading of ordinance number 25, series of 2022, an ordinance of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, amending the town's schedule of fines, penalties, and administrative fees related to short-term rental license fees and cemetery fees, and amending the town code to incorporate the fee schedule as Appendix C. It was interesting, using the term short-term rental license fees. It sounds like we're got STR issue at the cemetery, which I don't think's a problem.
Yeah, that's
I think
where
it's,
I got
I think it's
confused.
more in the nature of a long.
That's what I read on the first time.
99-year lease.
Short-term rental at the cemetery.
It was a cemetery thing, the short-term rentals, I got confused, I'm sorry.
That's more permanent.
Dig deeper, yeah.
So I will only repeat myself briefly, but this is an ordinance to update the town's fee schedule with respect to short-term rental fees, cemetery fees, as contemplated by the prior two ordinances. And the way this is set up is the code authorizes our penalties, fees, and fines to be set out in a schedule, which we have to update it by ordinance. So historically, that's what we've done, approved an ordinance, and we have this schedule. But then there tend to be questions, where can I find this schedule? And it's just an attachment to the ordinance. So this ordinance does two things. It updates it, and then it incorporates it within the code as an appendix. So if you're online, you're looking at the code, there's Appendix A, Appendix B, I can't remember what those are, but now there'll be the schedule of fines right there on the code that you can click on. One minor change for second reading, you're gonna see a slight change to this schedule. The council, when you recently adopted sustainable building regulations and amended the code, there were REMP fees and other fees related to SBRs that were specifically incorporated in the code. We're gonna kind of treat those as an exception to the rule for now and keep them in the code, because we think it's important as people are digging into the SBRs that they see, oh, right here with them are what those fees are going to be. In almost every other case, it makes sense to have them in this separate schedule. So there was a little bit of an incongruence between the schedule and the code when the SBRs were adopted, and we're gonna make that change for second reading. So that's just a heads up on that.
So I'm sorry, you're removing the REMP fees from
the schedule.
From the schedule here that we're looking at.
Because they're in the code, yep.
Copy.
Pam?
Also, there is an amendment on the cemetery fees section. It should be $2,000 for residents outside the town limits, but within those two zip codes,
Instead of 35.
instead of 3,500, yes.
My only question would be, what are we have all this new stuff on the short-term rental license. What is our penalty gonna be?
So
Is
that might
in
be
here?
part of a
Secondary
A
conversation.
secondary conversation, we talked about that with the staff. So right now, if there's a violation, you'd be cited, there's the ability to cite someone into municipal court as a summons, and there's discretion for imposing a fine. So there's not set fines like, 250 and then it doubles for each one or something like that. So right now, there's discretion, and I think the expectation is that'll be a discussion to come in the next year or so when taking a look at the that issue and maybe some others. And Ryan, did you have anything else on, or Michelle, on that one?
No, I thought that seemed like the most straightforward approach. We had talked about having some kind of tiered, fine schedule, but we felt that, with through communication with with Jeff, the litigator, that, we would be able to make sure people are compliant, and then, should we have repeat offenders, where you would normally institute some kind of graduated fines that you can just, take care of that through the courts. If that doesn't seem to work, we can bring it back, but I think doing it this way seems like a reasonable approach.
Ryan, were you meaning if there's an STR that does not report itself?
Yeah,
Self-report, yeah.
because like, it
Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
like we're kind of, I get where we're going with it, but if I was a short-term rental guy, I'd be like, whatever, like,
Yeah,
what, like,
I mean, I'll tell
are you gonna catch me? Maybe at some point.
It's the fine $300.
Yeah, what's, like, I think we should probably put some steep fine on there, you know, the carrot or the stick, because, you know, if we're guessing that there's 40 to 80 people, like, we're already having 40, 80 people outside compliance.
Sure. So,
You know, shedding up the compliance is helpful, but why am I gonna comply if there's no penalty to?
Well, and why am I gonna apply if he's not complying and he's not complying?
so I'll tell you why. So I think the first step is, as Ryan said, kind of outreach and, you know, trying to achieve compliance, just because we have this software, we're gonna be able to track it, and, you know, just trying to get people into the program. The same as it is now, if there's someone that doesn't have an STR license, you know, whether we put a specific penalty in or not, you know, we're still dealing with this issue of, okay, well, how do we identify the enforcement? So then once you've identified it, there's the ability to issue a citation into the municipal court, and that violation's subject to the general penalty provision of the code. And the maximum penalty, and I'm not saying that this is the penalty that would be imposed, but the maximum jurisdiction in the municipal court is $22,650. And so there's the discretion of the court to impose a fine and a penalty up to that amount. And so there's, you know, the option to specifically say, to amend the code or the fee schedule to say, well, first violation is going to be $250, and then it could be written as what's called a penalty assessment, and that's what would be on the face of your ticket. Here it'll say summons, you got to show up in court, and you're subject to potential penalties. So it's not that there's not going to be a penalty, it's just not decided what it will be yet.
Can I add one more thing is, you know, I think the power of the software is the guy that's been hiding out and not becoming a licensed STR. That shouldn't happen anymore. Like we're gonna know who you are, and you know it's gonna be that property owner that will pursue. And so you know, we think that this would be a functional way to get people into compliance, and you know it's gonna take some follow up and staff time certainly, but you know I think we would be able to manage it if somebody's getting, you know, a $500 fine their first time in court, plus, you know, there may be an issue of them having not been paying their taxes too. So, you know, I think to start this program off and really get a handle on the management of it, you know, I think this seems like a good way to kind of have that punitive hammer if we need it, but you know, kind of start it off with being able to identify these folks and get them to voluntarily comply initially.
Great.
How does the software aid in the discovery of STRs that are unreported?
Say that again, Angela?
How does the software aid in the discovery of STRs that have gone unreported? How does that work?
So it scours, like, I was really surprised. I think the number was like 40 different sites that, you know, basically advertise for short-term rentals. And it'll geo-reference those sites to Basalt. So if there is an STR being advertised that doesn't have a license, because we'll you know make sure that data gets put into the software, then it'll automatically notify us that you have an STR that's illegally operating.
Oh, wow.
It's pretty slick. Yeah.
We're gonna learn a lot in the first year.
Yeah.
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 Okay, that was a good piece of information.
Yeah, gonna have to tell the
Yeah.
people to stay elsewhere now. The question I had was on the rates. So we're saying that in addition to moving it, we've combed through all these columns and looked at the fees that we're implementing, and this is also consistent with neighboring communities, or?
You know, there's a slight, yes, I mean, there's a range in the valley. Some of the valley communities have gone so far as to, you know, kind of divvy it up by, well, if you have, you know, 1 to 2 rooms, it costs this much. If it's 3 to 4 rooms, it's that much. And we simply don't have, you know, they have staff that are dealing with that. And so, you know, we're taking it as a flat fee, that we think is just, you know, suits our ability to really, manage it, and is, you know, still fair.
I'm sorry, my question really is, you know, this fee schedule is exhaustive. It's size and load, weight damage, height, length of vehicles. It's across the board, so it's not just, you know, it's the ramp and it's all those things. So do we go through and do a comprehensive sort of look at all of these categories as we move them? Because that seems to be part 2 here, right?
Yeah, so almost everything that was already that you see in the fee schedule was already there. And the only fees that are changing are the short-term rental and the cemetery fees. Everything related to traffic was updated, and I guess let me back up. The last kind of overhaul to the fee schedule was 2019, and then we did an update to the model traffic code in 2020 or 2021, because we adopted the 2020 model traffic code, and at that time updated the fines related to it. So that piece changed in 2021, let's say. And so then this is just for ease of kind of mechanics, just repealing and replacing it all, but really the only changes are the cemetery and STR fees.
Okay, I got it. So like the administrative fees for the town and stuff, that hasn't changed?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion, comments? Entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the town council approve ordinance number 25, series of 2022 on first reading and set public hearing and second reading for December 13th, 2022.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Mayor Kane,
Yes.
Dieter Schindler,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle,
Yes.
and Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I think
Be
that's it.
safe
Happy
on your
Thanksgiving to
journeys
everybody.
and your travels.
Happy
and
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thanks for
Thank you. Happy
being here.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You guys. Try not to rub it in. Looks like you're sitting outside, Glenn.
I am. It's like 70 degrees. It's very nice.
Where's night and light?
Have a good one.
Enjoy your European travels. That
Thank you,
sounds
thank
amazing.
you.
Yes.
You're like a rock star, like city to city to city.
Yeah, well,
And then go to the next one.
Thank God we get back on the
whole family.
Thursday the 1st and have like that entire like 3-day weekend to recover.
Yeah. What city are we? Oh, we're in Basalt now.
We
gotta catch a train. Oh no, wait, we're home. That's what I've heard. That's what I've heard. Yeah. Well. Do you need something? We're adjourned.
Yeah, my chore for that day is YouTube.
Weird part of the meeting. Just get up.